Welcome to Ask Me Anything. In these series, normally it'll be Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. Tuesday. We're still early on in the cycle, and I haven't had many people coming on. I'll do a replay of this one. Normally it's Wednesday morning, and it's about self-mastery. We get into the dynamic leader, but I've been going live since November. I have a lot of content. The content is then clipped and put out on LinkedIn and Facebook, other platforms, wherever you're watching this. The Ask Me Anything is to give the opportunity for people to come online, or you can ask me in the chat. But I don't always see what's going on in the chat because different platforms. So I'm putting right now into the chat, or it may be comments, and those comments will, if you click that, you'll be able to get online. The other reason I started doing the Ask Me Anything is I noticed that because I'm usually taking an entire hour to go through everything. I don't notice when people are asking to come online. So this is a way to focus on that. So I constantly look at this page and make sure that. But technology is really fun today. It just disappeared. So I look at this page constantly now because I'm facing it. And that page, I'll see you come on because the number will change. I'll see the person has a question. In other words, you can ask, you can click that link, come on stage, and we can have a conversation about it. You so type your question in, and if I see it, I'll respond at every platform. I just need to test the platforms to see how the question comments come in. So I'll get that done. All right, and what we're talking about is this belief that we can change personality, we can change presence, and we can do that not by focusing on the construct level, but by focusing on it at the habitual elements level. And next week, 6, I'll have a workshop where I teach how to do this. We actually practice the work. It's all live with interaction, practicing the exercises, and no recordings, no AI, it's all live. And you'll leave there with the skills. I'm not going to cover every single skill. Have the skills to start moving this whole thing upstream. And in the last segment, I was talking presence. And when you think about changing presence, this is a infographic from Mark Franzoni. You can find him on LinkedIn, and you can go to his website, mfranzoni.me, and join his newsletter to get more like this. Leave, not position. We were talking about presence as a construct. If I told somebody that you can stop smoking, yeah, they believe that. If I told somebody that you can change habits around exercise or nutrition, that they believe that. Those are things. The harder ones are reaction. And if I told someone you could change how you react to people in a calm situation, yeah, they have confidence in that. If I tell them you can change how you can react in a highly charged threat situation, they may believe it, but they don't have any reference to say, yes, I did this, or yes, I can do it. They don't have a lot of confidence. And I believe that lack of confidence that they can still react the way they want, a bad day of a bad week, amidst chaos, I think is what prevents some people from going after their dreams, going after what they want. And then the hardest type of behavior to change, or the hardest type of habit to form, the ones related to personality or identity, and talking about presence. So these are constructs: personality, presence, identity. These are that are made up of thousands of elements, little tiny habits that happen thousands of times a day, and these habits display our personality. These habits come to show us show a person what the personality is, or the identity. So to change it, yes, you could change it with visualization over time. It will happen eventually. But you also have relapses because you have other habits that you didn't think about, and they come up when you least expect them. Anybody who's been on this personal development journey knows what I'm talking about. You'll get to a point and everything's going fine, and then something comes and you can't handle it, and it's like, oh man, I thought you were starting over again. What we're doing is, instead of using correction, we're using prevention, but prevention is happening so early in the system, and so you can lead with presence, not position. So here's some things that I'll look. This is a very common one: taking a breath before reacting. And this is not my friend's onlys, but I always say we don't want our response to be our reaction. So taking a breath, and a short breath through the nose and a long breath, a long exhale. Because remember, the subconscious is scaling. You take 1 2 second breath, it really has, you haven't lost anything, right? If I pause for 3 seconds, that was a 3-second pause almost. You don't lose anything. It's not like it's going to kill you because there's no tiger there. Deep listen, reflect what you heard. I talked about you as a leader, dynamic leadership. This is about asking questions, then reflect what you heard. That gives you a chance to see where they're going. What is it that they're feeling? And I talked about also the 2 questions. One is a data point. The second one is, are they converging or are they diverging? And it's important to know that because it's going to do next. Then genuine encouragement, celebrate efforts, not just results. Days ago, in fact, you can see it out there right now. It's called onboarding, and it's the second one, the one that just ran this morning, 5:15 Pacific time. As a replay. I talk about red, white, and blue language as observable behavior, and we talk about how blue language can drive behavior because it taps into the same system that uses dopamine and serotonin. So it's not just I'm using this infographic as a way to talk about applying, and then of course admitting mistakes and growing from them, because this is sometimes what it takes to advance. You have to let go of some baggage. You have to let go of the need to be right. You have to let go of some things that you've said publicly to make it to the next level. So if you're just joining, there's a link in the chat or comments, and you can get that link, and it will allow you'll be able to invite yourself on stage. Let's do this. I'll show the link. There's the link, but you can also click it in the comments. So if you're not able to, you can copy paste that, or you won't be able to copy paste it, but reinsert it. All right, let me get into some questions that have to do with this self-mastery. And I haven't looked at these questions before, so let's take a look at them. Why visualizations sometimes seem to make opportunities appear in real life? Between breathing and visualization, these are probably the 2 most reliable tools that we have. The caveat I'll say is that the earlier you use visualization, the more effective it's. Back to what I was saying earlier, that when you change things at the millisecond level, at the network of neurons level, visualization work more effectively than it does at the post level. So for example, if you are rehearsing and visualizing, reacting a certain way to things, that's going to have some power, but exercise it earlier. If you wait till the adrenaline's already flowing, the cortisol's already flowing, the visualization may not work as well. The other thing is sometimes we have conflict. So this idea of I don't I don't use word manifestation. The universe did it. I am looking at agency and personal leadership, because that's what dynamic leadership is about. It's agency. It's not relying on some external thing. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not. In fact, I do live by faith, believe in a spiritual being above me, God, but I don't rely on that for the habit change work, because we have a system that is able to do that. And now, the reason why visualization does work in the times that it does not is because your habit is overriding it. You can use visualization to change habits, but if you are using visualization to override your habits, it's not going to be as effective. So yes, it does work, and sometimes it seems to work better than others. And it says visualization sometimes seem to make opportunities appear in real life. The network of neurons side is processing at 11 million bits per second. The conscious mind processes at 50 bits per second. The thing that you want or care about, why people say there's two multiple universes and parallel tracks, no. It's that the information is already there. The pervading system filters it down to the 50 bits per second so you can perceive it. This is the concept of you buy a silver car, because there's not many silver cars, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of silver cars. It's just that the reticular activating system passed through. Another example that's related to that, you may have experienced when you're cleaning things, throw something away, you feel like, man, as soon as I throw it away, I need it. Well, it's not that you need it, it's that you've already primed you to find a need for it, to fulfill that, to close that loop, to make you think you need it. It's connected to throwing away. It is throwing it away, but it's your own reticular activating system doing that. This is why priming works. You tell a person how to think of a thing, and then the thing happens. And what's interesting about priming is that its sequence is more important than the thing. So if you have two opposing primes, first overrides the other one. So this is why visualization will work, because you're priming yourself, changing your filtering with the reticular activating system. And so it's very easy to see that, yeah, why does sometimes opportunities appear in real life? Yeah, they were there, so you're just seeing them. And then the next part is that you actually have to act on it. You can't just say, oh, yeah, I have, I see this, I'm aware of it. You have to actually act on it. And again, you can join me online. It says can't post messages to some channels. Yes, some channels may not see it. That's why I'm talking about it. That's why I put it on here. And the adding stream is always going to be the same. Something disconnects. Yeah, so join stage. Yeah, so it's always going to be the same. So if you just keep that link from the comments or from screenshot this and type it in, you always save that link. It should work every time I go live on these Wednesdays. Another question. People say they can feel when something will work out. That tuition or pattern recognition? We don't live by reality. We live by what the brain predicts will be reality. In other words, the brain instrument and what will be, and that primes us. And this is why sometimes you have to live it. I remember when I used to have to speak before groups, I would manage my entire environment that whole day. I would get an exercise routine, and I would walk, and I would get away from the hotel and try not to have to interact with people. This bubble, because I wanted to perform at my best. I wanted to be the best version of myself. Sometimes something would happen, and you have to push that out so it doesn't affect you. The question, sometimes they can feel something will, but But again, sometimes you may feel that it won't work out. And is already happening. This is the neural impact already happening after a trigger. So you get a stimulus, this pre thing, it's already going. By the time conscious mind is aware of it, it's already been processing for up to a half second. This is about how you are priming yourself and how in your self-talk and how you believe this thing. Not it's not willy-nilly. It's not random. You are reflecting what's going on unconsciously, which is accessible in that first half second. You can look at the one now at 7 o'clock Pacific time. And in the network of neurons side, the effort is very, very low to change habits or create change identity, change a construct. Very, very low effort and high impact because you're leveraging the speed and the automaticity of the subconscious. We train it at the subconscious so you're not having those triggers. So instead of me having to walk in a bubble for that whole day before the presentation, it was great when early in the day, but when they were late in the day, it was like I had to avoid this thing because I needed this bubble. I've now solved, and I do it by moving everything, hence the dynamic leadership. So you want to be able to be more directive about that. And I don't start with big things. We start with small things, but we'll do that in the workshop. You'll actually get to experience what it feels like to condition something at the network of neurons level and experience it during the workshops, the full day workshops. So we'll do some things early in the workshop and you'll see I almost used the word manifest, how they come to being at the end of the workshop. But there's other things we do as well. There's multiple exercises that you do to start. You want to have layers and layers. We'll even do the positivity exercise where you condition at the sub-level, the bias towards, to shift from the threat to the bias towards. Why do some days everything seems to flow and other days everything feels blocked, even when circumstances are the same? Well, so first of all, let's accept that we have cycles. We have up and down cycles. And when we're low energy and low on positivity, things are going to be harder. When we're high on positivity, things are going to be easier to a degree, but it's also cycles. I use this Garmin watch now, and it has a thing on their recovery. Sometimes when I ski really hard, and I like skiing and snowboarding because you put yourself into situations and you're going against gravity. Gravity is relentless. You have to perform once you go into that situation. And I needed 96 hours of recovery. I had never thought about it like that before. And sure enough, that next day was a little bit harder to move. So I have the energy there. 96 hours of recovery. So for 2 days, I was a little bit lower energy before I thought about it. Oh, I just need to, work harder or whatever. But now that I see it with the watch, it doesn't really change anything. But I'm using it to answer this question. It could be just something that you're tired. On the other hand, it gets back to, I would say, ritual. Personally, I use a breathing ritual in the morning where I go 10 minutes of 15-second exhales. So that's 2 breaths a minute for 10 minutes. And during that time, I'm preparing my day, but I'm also anchoring myself that if anything happens during the day, I get back to that cohesion. Remember, it's happening 33,000 times a day, these stimulus reaction cycles. And the can get to coherence before the next stimulation cycle, the better off you'll be. I don't have an answer if you're going to be able to needing 96 hours of recovery. That's another story. But I do think that there are prevention things you can do so that it doesn't have as much of an impact to the allostasis versus homeostasis. But I definitely wouldn't land on I'm not good enough or it's me, whatever, because you have cycles. We have up and down cycles, and it's just reality. If confidence is just a belief, why does it disappear under pressure? If confidence is just a belief, why does it disappear under pressure? Well, first of all, let's belief. So a lot of these beliefs we got from when we were in. Their beliefs can live in the network of neurons as associations that are layered on associations that are layered on associations. But also, beliefs can be given to us, self-contained from a parent or from a love, someone we disbelief, or it could be a phobia, right? That I believe snakes are going to kill me, whatever that is, a phobia. And so those beliefs are tightly combined with patterns. In my step 1 of 7-step reset, I talk about beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming, mindset, and physiology. And I talk about it in that order. But when in reality, all 5 of those can impact the others. Belief is one of the strongest ones. And your beliefs can have so many other connections. That's, I think, what we're getting to in this question of confidence, just a belief. I would say, first of all, confidence is not just a belief. It's a set of habit patterns. And if you're in one area, not in another area, you can look at what are some of the beliefs you have that lead to that confidence. But I would also say that you have patterns that cause your belief yourself to be disrupted because you allow yourself to get into fight or flight versus staying in focus and engage. If you can stay in focus and engage, you're going to be more likely to respond in a productive way to whatever stimulus comes in. You're already stressed out or close to fight. So I don't know the nature of this. Why does this pressure? I would say there's something else that's going on. When pressure happens, it can remind us of something bad that happened in the past. That's an association. First half second. We're not conscious of it, but it's a sensation. So here's another important point. The conscious mind understand the subconscious energy that's going through the neural pathways as a one-to-one sensations, because there's energy in motion. After that half second, the network of neurons translates the energy signals. It can be perceived by the conscious mind, whether it's a different kind of sensation, a picture, an emotion, a feeling, or something like that. What I would say for this question is start paying attention to those early sensations that are coming up and recognize that those are opportunities to do some conditioning. You can't suppress it because it's a fight or flight response that's coming up. Response is coming up because it feels like you're in fear. So this would be like yourself ignore the tiger and yourself is saying the tiger coming. But you can condition and look at what happened before that led to that, and then condition to that one. I would say, though, the more global solution would be the positivity exercise. That's what we teach in the workshop. And you do that exercise for 6 weeks, 90 seconds, three sets a day. So perhaps it takes 90 seconds. You do that three times a day, 6 weeks, and you will have reconditioned your subconscious to bias not for threat, but for neutral and positive. And then you won't feel that disappearing under pressure. So it's the pressure, but it's coming from inside how you've made associations. And so you have to go upstream to see what is the association that's connected to that. But you don't want to just fix that association. It's not about just changing that association. It's using that to condition a new response so that thing is no longer a threat. It might be criticism. You were criticized. Okay, you're not going to be able to switch away all criticism. But what you can do is how you look at criticism. And we get into it like transformational vocabulary is one. Criticism is a gift. Feedback is a gift. And you can condition that response in. But you have to do it at the network of neurons level. You can't do it at the conscious mind level because then it's just... Why only before I have time to think? And that's because the fight or flight within the first tenth of a second. So the stimulus happens. Remember, pre-listening. That's your perpetual question. If your perpetual question is what's going to go wrong today, then 100% you're going to be reacting emotionally to anything slightly negative. If your perpetual question is, I know there's goodness here, what is, is it every cloud of adversity has a silver lining? If that's your perpetual question, where's the silver lining? You're probably going to have less of that. The emotional reaction is because somewhere early in the cycle, after this is not mental health, but somewhere early on, it triggered an association that has the path of least resistance, that neural pathway that has the myelin and synapses, that of least resistance is the one that says this thing is danger. And then the emotion, more like attention. But in her book, Joan Rosenberg, she said that all anxiety can be distilled to 8 different emotions. And we talk about emotional modulation. You want to locate emotion, you want to label it with one of the 8. So it's sadness, shame, embarrassment, vulnerability, frustration, helplessness, and disappointment. Those are the 8 emotions that all anxiety gets distilled to. Once you label one of those, you can see sadness might require a different response than shame, and that might require a different response than frustration. And by labeling it, you're able to get some distance from it and have a plan, and then you learn from it. What am I supposed to learn from it? So emotional modulation happens to make sure we're still coherence. That's step 2. Step 2 is making sure we have coherence and that we're present. That way when the stimulus comes, we're able to handle it with voice. So we do use emotional modulation in step 8, that coherence, so we're not in rigidity and chaos. We also use it in the response. So the first check in the response after the reaction is handed off to his mind is, do I need to rate? And that's why I say that it's a 1-second model, but sometimes it might take 90 seconds, up to 90 seconds, because that emotional modulation really inside that 90 seconds. So rather, it's like, why do I react emotionally? I think that's what do we need to do about that, and we need to be more coherent before the stimulus comes, and we need to be quick at modulating so that you're not having as many instances where you have to modulate. So by modulating at step 2, coherence, you're going to have fewer instances where you have to modulate at step 4. And then you can use anchors, and that's what I talk about readiness. I talk about conditioning your subconscious. You're not so reactive with all that emotion. And then the other one is using anchors and things like that to come back to that state. I'll do one more. I don't see anybody coming in. I don't see any messages. Again, you join on stage using that link. I don't see anybody coming in. I see no questions. And I'll do this again on Wednesday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So yeah, any questions you have as I'm going through, you look at my content. There's content all over my page. You can look at that content. And if you have questions about it, just jot it down and bring those questions in, or send them in to me. You can send them in on these. Looking at this, you can put the question in there, and then I'll answer it next week when I go on Wednesday. That's just like I'm doing now. How can 2 people hear the same sentence and walk away offended versus appreciative? Yeah, when I start everything through the network of neurons, and it's along with quantum physics. It's like once you start looking at things from quantum physics view, it's hard to look at it from a Newtonian physics view. But keep in mind, the subconscious is a network of neurons is processing 11 million bits per second. If I walk into I can't take all that in. Of a movie camera or video camera is processing something like 600,000 or 700,000 bits per second, and the processing 12 or 14 times. It's taking in a lot of information. And so if you walk into, we have meaning, that pre-listening. Our perpetual question is different. If a person says, how's this versus how's this going to hurt me? Just that pre-listening is going to color the message is the stimulus. The pre-listening is, How's this going to help me versus how's this going to hurt me? That's the message comes in. That leads to the initial detection, or brings into the initial detection, and it starts to add meaning. And with that meaning, it looks at the path of least resistance. That's the habit. That's the myelinated neuron with the synapses, ample synapses. That's the path of least resistance. You're into a habit pattern that you may have been running for decades. To your first line of defense is the perpetual question. Your second line of defense is to use the positivity exercise. That's the 90 seconds per set, 3 sets a day for 6 weeks, to recondition your network of neurons to bias towards positive instead of negative. So it happens way upstream. Fixing it on the conscious level, not going to happen. Well, it'll happen. It'll take decades. And then even after you've fixed it, there's going to be something. Because remember, we live in a world of VUCA, volatility, complexity, and ambiguity. It's constant. And Banny, you have, the Banny, brittle and anxious, non-linear, comprehensible. It's constant. My point is, you may correct it at level, but only for a time, because eventually something's going to show up that you've never dealt with before. You could not have worked out a solution for it, and it's going to hit you, and it's going to send you back to 0 to 7 conditioning. So what we're doing is the conditioning. That's why I call it a 7-step reset. And that's why I talk about this all the time, because in a world of artificial intelligence, we're already being bombarded with 1,000 or more stimulus per day, ad stimuli per day. And it's only going to get, and because headlines and ads tend to go with fear-based kind of messaging, it's just going to get harder and harder, and it's going to be tapping into that kind of Banny thing. So let's work on resetting the conditioning, so we're not using conditioning that worked 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're using conditioning that makes sense for our current quest and our vision. All right, I'm going to close this down now. I'll leave it up on LinkedIn. And then next week, if you have questions about this, feel free to shoot them my way. You can put them in the comments, and I'll see them, and I'll answer them next week, same time. I have a great week.